Effective communication. What the heck is that? There are so many people that have issues with communicating effectively with their partners, with their friends, with family members, with people that they work with. And it seems to be an issue with not only people that suffer from codependency, but pretty much all over the place. So I wanted to just talk about 3 different types of communication styles and see maybe where you fit in and give examples of how to use healthier communication styles if you're not fitting into one of those categories. So one of them is aggressive communication, and that's the one that most people are probably pretty familiar with. It's someone who gets in your face, who might point at you, who might put their body in front. They might have their hands crossed in front of them as they angrily look at you and speak to you. Their tone is very loud. They're very accusatory. There's a lot of you statements that are being made. You make me feel, you do this. There's a lot of those kinds of wording that is going on with aggressive communication, and it makes the person who's being spoken to that way feel very defensive and feel very uncomfortable. The other side of the coin is passive communication. There's a lot of people that I work with where passive communication is what they have learned to use to be able to deal with the more aggressive people that they've had in their lives. However, passive communication is not going to help as well. Why? Because none of us are mind readers. So what's passive communication? Passive is basically letting other people walk all over you. It's not stating your feelings. It's not saying what you want. It's not letting anyone know the expectations that you have for them. It's like when someone says to you, hey, where do you want to go out to eat? And they're like, wherever. And then somebody else says, well, how about this place? And you're like, sure. But you really want to say, I want to go to Mexican food, or I want to go to French food, or, whatever it is that you're in the mood for. You're afraid to say what really is on your mind because you're afraid of the other person's reaction. You're trying to protect the other person from what your needs are. And that's not a good place to be. We want to know what you're thinking. Most people will try to accommodate if they're healthy and they know what you need, but you need to be able to express it. So what's the third communication style? Assertive communication. Assertive communication is the beginning part of healthy boundaries. Assertive communication allows the person who's speaking and the person who's being spoken to feel like there is equal power and equal balance. It allows both people to feel comfortable. It allows you to feel heard, while it also allows the other person to feel like they can share their information and their feelings as well. So it's really an equal opportunity for both parties to have a real conversation and for both parties to feel as if they are being heard. So what are some tips that you can use during assertive communication? Well, obviously, clearly state your needs. That's something that's really important. A lot of times people will say that people were not listening to them and they were speaking assertively. But when we start breaking it down, they're not actually using assertive communication. So really make sure that you speak your needs. Another thing you can do is make sure you're keeping eye contact when you're having assertive communication. If you're looking around and not paying attention and you're just saying things, you're going to not have the interest of the person who's listening to you. They're not going to be as respectful of you. They're not going to care what you have to say because you don't seem like you care what you have to say. So making sure that you are making eye contact. Listen to the other person without interruption. So, you might have something that you're dying to say and you really want to say it, but if you jump in on them and keep them from being able to say what's on their mind, that's going to keep them from being able to communicate, and it's going to keep you from listening. Part of speaking and communicating is not only having your thoughts across to the other person, but it's also about listening to what the other person has to say. Too often we are listening, quote unquote, because we're really just trying to think of the next thing we're going to say to the person. That's not really listening. Listening is actually, you might look at someone, make eye contact, nod, lean in a little bit, let the person know that you're actually listening and paying attention. And sometimes it's a good idea where if it's a really long thing that they're saying, to kind of reiterate some of the main points, and kind of keeps you involved in the conversation and lets the other person know that what they're saying is important as well. Appropriate speaking volume. I talk loudly because of the fact that I'm a public speaker and I'm constantly speaking in front of large groups. However, if I'm having a conversation with my husband, it's not going to be this loud, aggressive tone that I'm going to be using. I want to make sure that my tone is appropriate for what it is that I'm talking about. So you want to make sure that you're not yelling, you're not screaming, you are in a conversational tone that does not feel like, or make the other person feel like you're being accusatory of them. And then, of course, body language. If you are, the eye contact, this is what makes the eye contact so important. Having that eye contact will make sure that the person realizes that you are in this conversation back and forth. It's an A and B conversation. If you are, someone that's like looking down and you're kind of shrugged in, your hands are clasped, you're kind of holding yourself in, again, whether it's passive or aggressive, depending on where the other person's coming from. But if your hands are like this, that is another, communication that you're not interested, that you don't really care what the other person has to say. So, it's really important to be able to do that. So what can you do? Well, make sure that you are respecting yourself. Know who you are, work on your confidence so that you really know who you are. Know what is important to you, know what your values are. All of that is going to really help you is when you are comfortable in your own skin, you know who you are, it's easier to express your feelings and thoughts with another person because you're not so worried about them being angry or responding in a hurtful way towards you. Another thing, express your thoughts and feelings calmly. So when you are speaking, make sure that you are not coming from a place of anger. I know sometimes when we're frustrated, we might come across with a different tone than if we are feeling, comfortable and happy. So maybe the best time to talk about this issue that you have with your partner or friend or other relationship is not when you're in the heat of the moment, because you might say and do things that you might not mean. And if you are cursing, screaming, getting aggressive into someone else's face, some of those things you can't come back from. So you want to make sure that you are speaking in that calm manner. Especially in the beginning, for anyone who's just learning how to practice their assertive communication, you're practicing in the beginning. So what should you do? Maybe write it out. Maybe with a coach or a therapist, practice how you're going to use the assertive communication forms. And that way you're able to feel a little bit more confident when you do actually have to use it. Set up examples. Hey, well, when I'm online at the grocery store and, someone bumps into me, what do I say to this person when it's the third time they did it? Because their cart is now banging into my legs or, whatever. Really think about what it's going to be because, it's like with anything. When we are used to something, that's what we automatically go to. So if you've already practiced assertive communication styles and ways of communicating, then when you are in the moment and it's, whatever's going on, you will go to what you know. And since you've practiced it already, you'll be better at those assertive communication types of styles. And then say no when you need to. It is never wrong for you to say no when it doesn't feel right for you. It is okay to say no. And you know what? It's okay for the other person to be angry or upset about it. That's not your problem. What you need to focus on is what feels right for you, what feels good for feels good inside, and practice that assertive communication so that both sides are on equal playing fields. No one is acting like one person is better or less important than the other person, and it really actually opens up the possibility for deeper relationships and better conversations and communication.